Washington for the win. Mariota has it rejected by Benito, and Denver has won 9 in a row.
That was a very good football game last night. A highly entertaining NFL football game. I mean, haymaker after haymaker with both teams barely standing at the end, and yet they were still throwing punches and landing over and over again. It's a shame that it didn't end differently. I wanted it to end differently. I know some of you, and I've read a little bit of the social media from late last night, were like, perfect scenario. They played great, but they didn't win. Better draft position. No, I wanted them to win that game. It was a game played by two teams who made a lot of really good plays in the game. Unfortunately, Denver made the last good play, and it was very decisive. Nick Benito smacking down the Marcus Mariota 2-point conversion throw, which was wide open for what would have been a walk-off win. Denver in overtime, 27-26. Good morning, everybody. This from JC. I just read this beauty. 7 straight losses. I'm done. You have to win that game. Mariota just has to put some air under it. If they had a better backup quarterback, they would have won the game last night. This from my guy Kevin. It's a different Kevin, not the normal Kevin. Kevin said that Doc was killing Kingsbury last night after the game. I'm like, no. You must have had that wrong. He had to be praising Kingsbury. They shredded the number 1 defense in the league all night long. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But look, it's always tough at 3-9. It is. It's hard to shake also the post-traumatic Snyder syndrome that everybody has. This a second straight overtime loss. This one, unlike the Miami loss in Madrid, though, because this was truly against not only one of the league's best teams, but the league, has 2 teams that are on this massive win streak, New England and Denver. And in Denver's case, they're just flat out either the best defense or one of the top 2. I think Houston's really close right now defensively. Those 2 teams are just dominant defensive football teams. Denver was anyway coming into this game. I'll have my game take. It's going to be a long list. Sorry for those that feel like last night was a lost cause. It's going to be a long list of things that I really liked from the game, and I'm very aware that they lost the game 27-26. And look, some of the things on the game take list that are good and positive and encouraging and promising in terms of the way I feel personally about them, I understand, and I'll concede this point going in. It's in some cases like with the defense in comparison to what it's been. Like the defense overall wasn't great, but compared to what it's been, it was really improved, much improved. I mean, they let Denver, they were a sieve in overtime, letting Denver go down and score a touchdown in 5 plays. But still, it was much better than it's been. So when I get to that, understand that especially as it relates to the defense, I'm conceding that some of this is in comparison to what it's been in recent weeks. The defense has improved since Dan Quinn took it over. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, he hasn't had to call a defense against Detroit or Seattle or Kansas City. All right, Miami and Denver aren't quite those teams offensively, but still, it looks different. It feels different. There are plays being made, and it's been impactful. Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, I love a lot of the people that weigh in on this stuff. But if you don't think Cliff Kingsbury had a good night last night, I'm not sure what you were watching. He literally had the league's number 1 defense and Vance Joseph, a really good defensive coordinator, reeling the entire night. They ran the ball well. That was huge in the game. Terry McLaurin's return was so impactful. They missed having a true number 1 wide receiver, starting wide receiver on the field. Not just because of the plays he can make, but because of the way a defense has to defend you. When you don't have real NFL wide receivers on the field, which has been the case in some of these games, you don't have to worry about getting beat in man coverage. You don't have to worry about, you can focus on the line of scrimmage and dominating that. Marcus Mariota, my God, what a blanking night he had after a brutal interception early in the game. And there were a couple of other plays that were head scratchers, no doubt, but he turned into a flat out gunslinger in the fourth quarter and in overtime. I thought for the most part, the good so far outweighed the bad. The O-line last night against that defense to give up 2 sacks and a lot of it is on Cliff. Cliff gets a lot of the credit because he had a game plan that understood what they were facing. Like, drop back wasn't going to be the way to do it. You had to run the ball. You had to go quick game. It was constant early on, really up until the latter stages of the second half when they had to drop back. But at that point, they had Denver's defense in complete. They were flummoxed. They didn't know what was going on. But the quick game, the run game, the O-line, Traylon Burks, the catch he made, his return to the lineup. Who knew? Wagner had a pick. How about the Wagner play on the 3rd and 4 on Denver's last drive in regulation? You had to get a stop, or maybe the game ends there with a first down. And Wagner appears to check to a play that pulls Jacob Martin back into coverage right to where Bo Nix was throwing it. And he gets the pass breakup. Just a lot of good things from the game last night. And I'll get to all of them in the game take. And yes, I realize they didn't win the game. Denver had 27 points. Our team had 26 at the end. It's a 7th straight loss. They are 3-9. I'm fully aware of that. But I'm going to focus here before I get to my game take on a team that has had nothing go right for it all year long. By the way, add last night's finish to the list of gut punches. But I'm going to focus on what I think I've watched here in the last 2 weeks. And not just the last 2 weeks. I mean, there was the Detroit game and the Seattle games were really, really disturbing. There's no doubt about it. But we also, at least those that are willing to entertain the idea that actually injuries aren't an excuse. They're actually really impactful to a season. They just didn't have players on the field, and their defense was a complete and utter train wreck. But I think what we saw last night is we're seeing a culture that is healthy. I talked to somebody this morning who was in the locker room after the game, and he said, this is just so much different, and it's been different. Even during this losing stretch, they don't have losers. They don't have guys looking to get out quickly. They don't have guys throwing guys under the bus. This isn't the Snyder era. It's a culture that's healthy despite 9 losses in a row, despite a season that has gone sideways at every turn, despite taking just one body blow week in and week out. In Madrid against the Dolphins and last night, you saw a team that is nowhere near ready to bail. Not yet anyway, and I don't think it will. I think the players that they focused on bringing in, going back to last year, have a certain team-first profile, competitive level that leads to having the ability to survive stretches like the one they've gone through this year. Now, surviving, it's not going to lead to a winning record this year. It's not going to lead to playoff games this year. But continuing to prepare to win games and play to win has legs, in my opinion. If you don't agree, that's fair. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I think it has legs. This is a head coach, and I've pointed this out since the day he was hired. And now, after one full season here, in the last 4 regular season games of his head coaching career, he's 20-4. And in many of those seasons, their playoff hopes were extinguished. They weren't really legitimately there. This is a guy that doesn't lose teams. They don't go and start chucking people, including him and his staff, under the bus. For whatever reason, Dan Quinn is well-liked, well-respected, and very much believed in. His message over the years as a head coach has not failed him in seasons like this. It's assisted him. So I've said this a bunch over the last year and a half. I like Dan Quinn, and it is in comparison to what we had. I like this group in the front office. I like Adam Peters. I like our football organization right now. I do. Again, I get it. It's like, yeah, Sheehan, like after what we went through for 25 years, we'd take anybody. It's true that almost anybody was going to look good in comparison. But if I were being objective and didn't have the 25 years of Snyder saddled to my brain and my heart, I still think I would be like, nah, this dude, there's something to him. There's something to the organization right now that is a good culture. Treylon Burks on the post-game show apparently told London Fletcher and Bram, I think they do the interview, that it's just, it's the culture that he's absolutely enjoyed, that this place is a place that players really like. We saw that before the season began with Ben's agent survey that said Washington now is among the places that people feel like good people, good coaches, good setting, good culture. We've talked a lot about this over the last, month or so. I just can't relate to the vitriol. I can't relate right now. I'm not knocking you for it. I'm knocking you for the wanting to fire everybody. I'm not knocking you for being passionate and being angry and being upset. That's better than being apathetic. But I think, those of you who have wanted everybody to be fired, you saw last night with just some of their key contributors back on the field, how much different it looks versus practice squad and off the street guys. Imagine when the starting quarterback gets back. Look, Mariota last night. I mean, the dude was awesome in so many ways. I said, this was a game between two teams throwing one haymaker after another. Mariota was throwing a lot of the haymakers for our team. And I loved the performance. It was resilient. It was tough. It was fearless. It was different for him than some of his other stops. But there's no doubt in my mind, and I don't think there should be a doubt in most of your minds, that with Jaden Daniels, they win that game last night. They beat Miami and Madrid too, and they're 5-7, and the season's on. But he's been hurt, hasn't been available. Terry got back last night, but he's been hurt. He's missed a bunch of games. Will Harris back last night. Payne back last night. And they'll hopefully continue to get more. And by the way, let me be clear. That's no knock on Mariota because he might be the best backup quarterback in the league. And as we've talked about, this particular system and situation is the best of his career. But you see the difference with some of the key players coming back. Having Terry is, of course, a game changer. Having him out there with a healthy Debo and even Burks is completely different than Tay Martin and Robbie Chosen and Jacoby Jones and Chris Moore. By the way, did you hear Chris Collinsworth last night mention what I told you guys a few weeks back about the Seattle game? I told you that kind of in the response to the Kurt Warner critique video on Jaden, but Chris Collinsworth mentioned it last night as well, that in that Seattle game, the receivers they had in that game, it was an absolute S show. They were running the wrong routes in the game. Remember how Jaden immediately would tuck it and start to scramble? It's because where he was looking, the receiver wasn't running to based on the play. And Collinsworth said it last night so matter-of-factly. It was interesting. Clearly, they told, Tirico and Collinsworth in the lead-up about what had happened in the Seattle game. But I mentioned that to you guys a couple of weeks ago, and you guys were like, oh, you're going to kill. I didn't kill Kurt Warner. There were some plays that he pointed out that were legitimate. Steve Suter said the same thing in the film breakdown. But a bigger issue for that game that night was They just didn't have guys in the game that should be in the game, which has been the case all year long. But look, last night, Will Harris back, Payne back, Terry back. I thought Payne, by the way, played great. I think he did. He made a lot of plays in the run game, that's for sure. I felt good about the game and what I was watching. Not the loss, no moral victories, but given what this team looked like against Seattle and Detroit, 3-4 weeks ago, where they had no chance at all. Both of those games over by halftime. They had guys out there that just weren't anywhere near good enough to compete with teams like those. Madrid against Miami and this one against a Denver team that has now won 9 games in a row and has just a legitimate shutdown defense and has all year long. Not last night. Again, I think Houston's right now is number 1. I think Denver's number 2, but whatever. That's quibbling. But Kingsbury, Mariota, Ertz, Terry, the O-line, the running game. I mean, Washington's offense rolled up 419 yards, the second most of the season against Denver's defense. They were 8 for 17 on third down, the best third down performance against Denver's number 1 third down defense this season. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down in the game. They lost. They lost the game. But they're going to be a live team here in the next few weeks. The caveat to that would be, of course, if they get Jaden back, they continue to get healthier. And then, by the way, the players that come back stay healthy. That's a big thing, right? I liked last night. Denver may not win the Super Bowl. They're obviously a playoff team. They may be the number 1 seed in the AFC when all is said and done. I'm not sold on Nix quite yet. It's early. I think he's got a great coordinator. He's got some good pieces. And obviously the biggest supporting piece for Bo Nix as a young quarterback is playing on a team with an absolute dominant defense. I think they're really missing J.K. Dobbins the last few games in the backfield. He was having a phenomenal season. But the Skins were right there, man. 1 play away. But damn, that Nick Bonito, what a star player he has turned into. One of the best edge defensive players in the league. We talked about it on Friday. They had to keep him from wrecking the football game. He's done it multiple times this year. He made a great play. He made a great play. If he didn't, it was a walk-off win because McNichols was wide open on a perfectly designed 2-point play that, obviously accounted for greatness on the other side. Nick Bonito is great. And Marcus Mariota, yeah, he had to get it up in the air and put more air under it for sure. Tough loss. Really, really tough loss. I wanted it so badly watching it last night for selfish reasons, because it's just better when the team comes off a win. It's just better overall for people like me than losing is. It just is. I know some of you over the years have debated that. And look, some of the controversy, some of the craziness was not terrible for us, but winning's always much better. And I just thought, if they had pulled this off last night, no playoff scenario talk, but at 4-8, then they had a chance to get to 6-8 against Minnesota and the Giants. Minnesota, Brian Flores and that defense, they're no joke. Okay. Now their offense is a mess. I have no idea if it's going to be JJ McCarthy or Max Brosmer, who threw 4 picks and scored no points against Seattle. Wouldn't it be nice to get 4 picks in a game? Got 1 last night. Got a takeaway last night. That was huge. But just would have been, the idea of the possibility of getting to 6-8 before that Philadelphia game on December 20th, where you're not mathematically eliminated yet. For all practical purposes, you would still be, eliminated, but it just would have maybe given us something legitimate to cheer for this year. But they didn't win. They lost. Another loss. 7 straight losses. That's a fact. And what's also a fact is why they've lost 7 in a row. And last night was a reminder that they are a much better football team with, even just some of their best players back on the field. All right. My game take next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. If you want to listen that way, you can also watch this show. We stream it on our Team 980 YouTube channel. When you get there, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. It takes 10 seconds to do it, and it helps us out a lot.
Game decider. Mariota inside McLaurin, touchdown.
4th and goal in overtime. The slant to Terry may have been a little bit of a pick, like a lot of a pick, but man, I thought many more of the calls in that game last night, which I thought was poorly officiated. How many calls did they miss? How many calls did they get wrong? I thought the majority of them went against Washington. I've got the list of all of them, and I'll hit them during my game take. By the way, the decision to go for 2, I'm fine with it. I actually would have preferred it, but I think it's debatable, and I'll explain why a little bit later on in my game take. This segment of the show brought to you by our friends at Window Nation. If you need to replace your windows, but you've put it off because of cost, it's good that you waited until now, because right now you can take advantage of Window Nation's end-of-year sale. 50% off everything, half price on everything, and 0% interest for 5 years if you choose to finance that purchase. Rebuild your old builder grade windows with custom built high quality windows from Window Nation. Window Nation measures 3 times to ensure your windows fit perfectly and keep your home comfortable year round. Their installation crews, they finish the job in a day or less. You can enjoy the rest of our winter, which is coming this week, with minimal disruption. Get the windows you want to protect and beautify your home. Choose from over 1,500 styles and colors. The installation crew leaders that Window Nation has, they average over a decade of experience. You can trust Window Nation to install your windows right the first time. And there's no risk. Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on all their windows. You can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. Sale ends soon. Take advantage of it. Get it done before the real winter arrives later this month. Don't wait to put an end to your window problems. Schedule a fast, free, no obligation in-home estimate right now at windownation.com. All right, let's get to my game take.
Kevin's take. The good, the bad, the ugly from yesterday's Washington football team game. Here's Kevin.
All right, what I liked, what I didn't like, and several other observations. As I mentioned, there's a lot on the list of things to like from a game like last night's, which was really, an intense, highly entertaining, one of those memorable kind of games. Look, this weekend produced a lot of them going back to Thursday and the Thanksgiving Day games. And then the stunner in Philadelphia. It shouldn't be a stunner. Chicago's got a great record. It was a stunner a bit, I think, to a lot of people, though, including me. I didn't think they'd win the game. But last night was, at the end of that, an exhausting, 3.5 hour overtime affair where, Washington went, I hate to say, went toe to toe and didn't win, but Denver's on a roll. Denver's defense has been suffocating all season long, and Washington really played well in a lot of spots. But I do concede that some of what I'll say specifically about the defense more than anything else is in part because it's just not as bad as it was. All right, number one on the list of the things that I liked, the overall readiness and the fight of this team that has lived basically, a can go wrong, will go wrong existence. Really it started with the fumbled handoff against Chicago, but they were already starting to lose some players before that. But that October 13th Monday night game, which was kind of almost in the bag, so to speak, that botched handoff really was a devastating turn of events. I don't think it would have changed that much had they won that game. It was just they weren't, keeping their players on the field. But I loved the way they competed in Madrid, and I loved it even more last night. Dan Quinn, his staff, the players, especially those players that are kind of the most respected voices in that locker room and the leaders, credit to all of them. Number two on my list of things that I liked. This may be in counter to what some of you apparently think, but Cliff Kingsbury's game plan was really the best of the year for him. It was a fantastic night for our offensive coordinator. And look, overall, you just can see, what a difference just adding Terry McLaurin back into the lineup means. Having a legit wide receiver on the field versus no legit wide receivers is a big deal. The run game, the quick game, we talked about this on Friday, although not on the radio show. I did my pregame on the podcast more so. But they had to go quick game. You could not drop back against this particular defense, the number one sack team, pressure team in the league. The run game helped. The quick game helped. People got open because of really well-designed pick plays, motion that set up picks. Like the Debo and Lane play early, like the Terry and Debo play. The run game was a huge part of it because I think this really set the stage for everything against that defense. 11 of their first 21 plays were runs for 65 yards. All right, Chris Rodriguez to start, Mariota sprinkled in, which was important, not just as a zone read threat, but on designed runs, and then several key scrambles, of course. And then on the third drive, Kroski merits 2 best runs to open up that drive of 6 and 12 yards. 33 total rushes on the night for 143 yards, over 4 yards per carry. 4 of those 5, 33 rushes were scrambles by 4 or 5 of those were scrambles by Mariota. But overall, Rodriguez and Bill Kroski Merritt combined to go 17 for 71. That's over 4 yards per carry. Mariota ended up being the leading rusher, 10 for 55. The run game combined with that quick pass game negated Denver's lethal, league-leading pass rush. Even when they needed to drop back, the threat of the run combined with the threat of the quick game kept Denver's pass rush from impacting the game like it usually does. The number 1 sack and one of the top pressure teams in the league at one point last night, NBC put this chyron up there, had the lowest pressure rate in any game in the NFL this season. I don't know where it ended up. That was sometime in the second half. The O-line did a great job, but it was much more about Cliff's game plan of making sure that ball was out quickly, that the run threat was always there, that the run threat with the quarterback involved was always there. He called a game in which it gave them their best chance to move the ball, possess the ball, and score points against, statistically really the number 1 defense in the league. Again, I've been watching a lot here recently. I think Houston's might be just as good. But when you against a defense like that, 419 yards, 30 first downs, 8 of 17 on third down, 3 of 3 on fourth down, 26 points. And not only that, they played again, like against Miami. We talked about this, against Miami in particular. They played for the most part cleanly, which of course has been a major problem with some of the lineups they've had to put out there during the season, but not a lot of penalties. One terrible decision, okay? I don't know what Mariota was thinking. There were a couple of other ones he got away with, but I loved the gunslinger mentality at the end, man. Loved it. It was crucial to them having a chance to win the game. But, a few penalties, terrible, that one terrible throw, a few substitution issues, which, by the way, we've gotten used to, but only, a few. Actually, one of them was on defense. Even plays that didn't work had a chance to work. A couple, not a lot, of plays were there, but there were just some high throws, missed throws. The one thing I didn't love, I didn't love some of the Wildcat snaps in the red zone. Collinsworth pointed this out. I thought, they were slower developing run plays rather than the quick hitters, some of the duo stuff, some of the power and zone stuff, and even, the counter stuff, off that Wildcat tends to be slower developing. You can't run those against Denver. I think Debo took a Wildcat snap. I think Kroski Merritt took a Wildcat snap. And neither play worked. Overall, Cliff with a few weapons back and 2 weeks to prepare off the bye week, he proved once again that he can be a damn good game planner and play caller. How about Yankoff lining up in the backfield as a fullback and catching a 14-yard pass? The defense was and is legit, the one they faced, and Washington carved it up. I mean, think about the plays that didn't, the long pass to Ertz that Ertz couldn't pull in. The incredible, should have been game, in overtime before the Terry 4th and goal, the throw to Ertz in the back of the end zone. There were one-on-one chances that they had. Kingsbury, great night for the offensive coordinator. And again, I think a reminder as to why so many people in the league respect him, so many people in college football respect him. It's just hard to scheme up much when you don't have your best players on the field. And he still didn't have his best players on the field last night because for the, they played 12 games. So now 6.5 games without their starting quarterback. And he is just a tad of a difference maker for sure. Marcus Mariota is on my list of good. This is going to take a while to go through all the things I liked from the game. But look, he excelled in the quick game early. The game plan was perfect. But those quick game throws, remember, they got to be out. They got to be on time. They got to be accurate. They got to give a chance for the receiver to run after the catch. And he was accurate. He was quick. He was decisive. They were schemed up well. And it totally negated Denver's pass rush. But then he turned into, from a quick game thrower with a run game and making some plays with his own legs, he turns into, in the fourth quarter and in the overtime, a total gunslinger. In the second half and in overtime last night, Mariota was 19 of 37 for 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. After a first half, really almost 3 quarters of balance offensively with mostly quick game, then you get to the fourth quarter and the overtime, and there's more drop back. There's deep shots. I mean, he's taking risks. He's going for it. I mean, the deep ball to Terry that got called back, but then coming right back to the deep ball to Debo. The deep ball to Ertz that could have been pulled in. What a throw that was. A lot of what they were doing was out of necessity because they were in some long and, down and distance situations after that terrible intentional grounding penalty that was called on their final drive of regulation when he and the offense overcame a second and then a 3rd and 25. He was looking deep and then making a play with his legs if he didn't have the deep shot late in the game and in overtime. He was decisive all night long as a thrower and a runner. He extended plays. I talked about this on Friday. This is going to have to be a big Mariota game, extending plays. The 3rd and 25, the 19-yard throw to Terry that set up the 4th and 6, that was all Mariota and Terry. But he's extending and avoiding this lethal pass rush, getting out of harm's way and throwing a 19-yard ball to Terry that gets him into the 4th and 6 that they were able to convert. Because the next throw was the throw to Ertz on 4th and 6 that was brilliant. By the way, Terry was on a pitch count last night, so there were some key plays in the game where he wasn't on the field. I'm like, come on, guys. You got to put him on the field, even if he's on a pitch count. The defense is going to respect the situation more. The 4th and 6 in overtime by Mariota is the play of the game. He is sacked, but no, he isn't. He escapes, and he makes a throw just in the general area of where McNichols is, and Hufanga gets there early, and they called it. They should have. It was the right call. But it never happens without Mariota being able to throw the football. A sack there ends the game. Unbelievable he was able to extricate himself from that situation and get that throw off. So many other throws, so many other plays. The 19-yard read option keeper, the scramble for 12 on a 2nd and 11. He was, when he had some bad plays. We'll get to those, but he's really a perfect fit. He's not Jaden Daniels. Again, no knock against him. There's no one in the league and nobody out there that would say that they're better off with Mariota starting 17 games than Jaden Daniels. I know some of you, I hope only a few of you actually think that. But wow, he's got to be. They got to bring him back. He likes it here. He likes the role. He's phenomenal. According to everybody I talk to, just one of the best dudes, one of the most well-liked guys, and a true leader and mentor. That interception, man, what are they doing? What's he doing? He throws some that you're just like, what are you doing? Look, every quarterback does. Matt Stafford did yesterday, the best quarterback in the league this year. But yeah, that was, you're moving the football, and that's, you can't throw that ball. You can't jump throw a lot and hope that it'll work out. He had another jump throw that was lucky it wasn't picked. He threw that backwards pass to Bates when he was under pressure. I think that was Benito. It was quick pressure. And instead of just taking it and eating it, he threw it backwards, and it was a 7-yard loss, but it could have been a lost possession in that spot. You know, he missed some throws high. He missed a couple here and there, but overall, I mean, you have a normal NFL backup in that game. You're not in a 27-26 going for 2 to win the game situation against that defense. Good for him. He, had those issues in Philadelphia, the story about him in Philadelphia, and pretty much, on the verge of hanging it up. And he found a spot. He found a group that really fits everything that he's about. I hope he stays. I don't know that there will be there wasn't last year, a major clamoring for him to be a starting quarterback in places that need him. Maybe the market will be bigger this year because the sample size is much larger than it was last year. He's played and started in a lot of games. They've only won one of them, right? The Raiders game. But, he's legit in this style of offense, that's for sure. Terry McLaurin's on the list of good. I mean, the impact, look, some of you are hysterical. I do like Terry. I've always liked Terry. I've always considered Terry a number one wide receiver. I've always understood the impact of Terry versus no Terry. I just don't think he's an elite wide receiver. That's been the conversation. I don't think he's top 10. He's not. He's good, though. He's really good, and they haven't had anything like him all season long, except for him when he was on the field for 2 games previous to this one? How many was that? His third game of the year? Third or fourth of the season? What game did he get hurt in? I'm almost forgetting now. Was it the Green Bay game? He played the Giant game. No, he played through the Vegas game. Vegas game is where he got hurt. So that was his 5th game of the year. So 5 out of 12. And yeah, the KC game was a 3-touchdown loss, but it was much better offensively with him there. The Vegas game was the game he had played that before that. You can't, if you're going to put out Tay Martin and Jacoby Jones and Robbie Chosen and Chris Moore, and I'm forgetting the other guys that have been out there during the course of the year, you're not going to put much fear into a defense, and they're going to be able to, load up the box and stop your attempt to run the ball, and they're going to be able to come after you with no fear of playing man coverage across the board. Terry changes that. He was a big factor last night. 7 catches for 96 yards. The catch for the game winner is huge. The touchdown catch that got called back was big. He just had a lot of them last night. Did a really the low ball that he caught on a 3rd down from Marcus in the red zone to keep that drive going was big. He's a difference maker. There's no doubt about it. I thought Zach Ertz, look, he couldn't pull in the long one, and then he dropped the one in the end zone in overtime before the 4th and goal touchdown to Terry. But he had a good night, man. He is still, for Mariota and for Jaden, he's, a bit of a comfort, go-to. He's a blankie. I forget who referred to him as a blankie, but 10 catches for 106 yards on 13 targets, and he almost pulled in that deep one. That would have been a really good catch. He should have caught it. It was a beautiful throw. He dropped the one in the end zone, no doubt about it. And against Miami, he stumbled coming out of that break. I mean, what are you going to do? By the way, I thought Terry slipped a number of times and may have had a couple. He slipped on one occasion and made a catch, but Ertz has to be on the list. When you catch 10 balls for 106 yards, and several of them are move the chain throws, including that first 4th and 6 that they converted on. Zach Ertz is on the list of things that I liked. Chris Rodriguez, look, the numbers won't bear it out. He was just 11 for 41. But if you watched the game, you know that he's a good, tough, decisive at times runner. Even when it's not there, he makes something of it with yards after contact and with real tough physicality at the point of contact. The touchdown run in the second quarter that gave them a 7-6 lead, decisive, quick, more explosive than you think at times in watching him. He's a load coming downhill. I think every time we all watch him, we're like, he's good, isn't he? I think he is. This year he got into shape. He's getting more opportunities. His ability to run the football last night made everything else easier for the offense. As I mentioned in the open, between him and Bill and even Mariota sprinkled in, 11 of their first 21 plays were runs for 65 yards. Nearly 6 yards a carry on average against that defense. That made everything else possible and easier. The offensive line's pass protection. The offensive line is on this list, period. 50-plus dropbacks in the game and 2 sacks against the number 1 sack team by far in the NFL, and not like overwhelming, suffocating pressure. Again, it's a quick game. It's the way Cliff called it, designed it, planned for it. His game plan was perfect. But you still got to hold up in those drop back situations, which they did when it turned gunslinger time for Mariota at the end of that game. And they're trying to overcome 2nd and 3rd and 25s. Washington's offensive line is really coming to its own. It's an absolute strength on this football team. And it's really a good sign for the future. They're going to have to pay Tunsil, and it's going to be a lot of money. And it's going to be, some of you are going to hate it because he's going to be paid a lot of money at 33, 34, 35 years old. But it's going to happen. I thought last night defensively, the run defense was really good. I thought they really did a better job on the edges. Now, no J.K. Dobbins. They've missed him, Denver has. They had R.J. Harvey, the rookie from UCF, smaller back. I actually think Jaleel McLaughlin would have been a better option for them, especially on the edge runs. But they did a much better job against the run. What were the numbers overall for the night? 23 of 87, 3.8 yards per carry. Mims had, a fly sweep for 9 yards. Nix had a couple of scrambles for 16. But the two main backs, 19 carries for 59 yards. You're talking about 3.3 or whatever. I mean, we're talking about a good night against the run. What else is on my good list? I thought Bobby Wagner, in his brain last night is a big part of why they keep him out there for every snap, and a big part that we kind of miss when he's in coverage. We know he's a liability in coverage, but he gets that interception. They're down 20-14. They could go down 2 scores, and he reads it in zone coverage and picks it. Yay, a takeaway. And I mentioned this in the open, but there's that 3rd and 4, Denver's last offensive possession in regulation. They get a first down up 20-17. It may be game over. And he appears to check to a different play. And he gets the message to Jacob Martin, and he literally tells him where to go to. And he drops into coverage right to where Nix threw the football. Pass breakup, huge 3rd down stop. They're at his age, he can't run like he could. He is a liability in coverage. We saw that in the overtime. But he is the coach on the field. They don't take him off the field because they think they would be much worse without him out there. Frankie Louvu has a relentless motor. I included him on this list. The sack in the, in the 4th when they were down 20-17 on a 3rd and 3. The pressure where he did get away with a helmet-to-helmet on Nix on a 3rd down before the field goal in the first half that I think made it 6-0. He's a very good player behind a good defensive line. He's an average to good player like most are when playing behind a defensive line that isn't very good. Payne had big-time moments. Martin did. Sandra still better facing the quarterback in zone coverage. And he is a fearless tackler. I thought Eddie Goldman continued to do some good things up front. And then Jake Moody in his first game for Washington. 2 for 2 on field goals, including the game-tying field goal. Remember, he kicked the game winner for the Bears on Monday night, October 13th, to beat Washington. So not a bad night on field goals. Didn't miss an extra point. So that was huge. He's on that list. All right, there are things when you lose a game that you don't like. I'll list those for you when we come back. Some other observations. I'll go through all of the bad officiating calls last night. And then you guys, in about 10 to 15 minutes, if you want, you can start lining it up on the phones at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, the Team 980 streams this show on YouTube. Hit the like button and the subscribe button when you get there.
All right, everybody, we can get rolling. I thought, coming off the field, it just felt those are games you do love to be a part of. It's the absolute battle, two teams like going for it, throwing punches back and forth. And, that I hate the outcome, but I love the fight. It's been tough as hell, for a while. And I thought our guys played hard as hell. So I'm proving us all where we can get better. And obviously there's plenty of room to continue to do that. But, man, it was nice to have some guys back. Terry, I thought, made a bunch of big plays. Zach in the same space. I thought one that just had like a warrior performance was Marcus, just kind of willing it on some plays, using his arm, using his legs. It's tough ones to overcome. But like I said, I hate the outcome, but I do love the fight, where we're at, and get ready to start with you guys.
Dan Quinn, after the game, that's the first time I've heard that. Yeah, warrior is a good way to put it with Mariota last night. And, yeah, they came out. They played a very good football team, a very good defensive football team. Very well. put up the second most yards, had the best third down conversion percentage. They shredded a great defense last night. There's a lot to like about the performance last night, except for the final score. All right, let's get to the list of things that I did not like. And we'll do a few here and then a few on the other side of the 11 o'clock break. But, I'll start with this. There's just still not enough. And I get it. They don't have their guys for the most part. There's just not enough of a pass rush, a consistent one. There were moments, but overall, just one sack on 46, 47 dropbacks. Way too many easy pitch catch with no pressure plays for Denver. The truth is they should have had more. Denver should have on offense. Knicks missed at least 3 to 4 easy, wide open, schemed up throws, a couple to Evan Ingram. And they dropped a couple of passes from Knicks as well. The 3rd and 11 when they were down 14-13 on the first drive of the third quarter where Knicks had all day long and found Sutton 31 yards down the field is just one of those examples of you just can't in this league give quarterbacks that much time and try to cover it behind it. And look, they're not a team that can afford. They did it once last night. They got burned, sending extra pass rushers and playing man coverage. They can't play man coverage. It's a disaster when they do. You're going to mix it up some. By the way, not mixing it up enough sometimes can be a detriment. But I think that, overall, they just don't have the pass rushers. This isn't Von Miller in his heyday. Jacob Martin is high motor, and he's a really good rotational guy with an Armstrong and a Wise in your starting lineup. They're not getting, dominant interior pass rush pressure. I think Kinlaw's been really good all year, and especially, he's been good interior against the run. I thought Duran was good against the run last night, but, I think, they had some moments last night. They had some moments. There was the first of all, the Knicks touchdown pass where the knee nearly hits the ground at the end of the first half. That's good pressure. I mean, you're a whisker away. That's just a great play by the quarterback. There were a couple of moments that they got him off the field. They had a 3 and out last night. Maybe 2 of them. There was a 3rd and 5 where they almost conceded, hey, we're not able to get enough pass rush pressure. We're going to rush 2.5 because one of the D linemen were kind of sitting back, and they dropped basically 8.5 into coverage, and they still got Bryant, number 13, on a slant for 21 yards. They're limited defensively. There's just nothing, you can talk about, next man up all you want, but they just are very limited defensively, and they are not able to generate with what they have right now, any sort of sustainable real pass rush with 4. And then if they send, they're just so not good enough in coverage behind it. If you play man, they can't cover in man. If you play zone and you send people, they're easy pitch and catches, even if they're underneath. Look, you can send some people and you can sit back in zone on 3rd and 9, but on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, it creates too easy pitch and catch situations. But there are several other things on kind of the list of things. I did not like the way the end of the first half was handled by the head coach. I think that the 3rd and 3 call by Mariota, where he ran with 19 seconds left in regulation, was really high risk. The defense in overtime in particular was just, it's what it is. So there are several other things that hit my list of bad from the game. I'll get to the rest of them when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
No hesitation going for 2 in that situation. No, yeah, right going into it, into the overtime spot, I thought that would be the way that we would go. I kind of think of that as like a third possession in a way, David, to say if you get on D and you go, you can tie or you can go, and like that's the way. If you tie, you got to stop and get it back again. So that was the strategy all along. And honestly, it was a play that we liked. We got it batted down, but against the man-to-man, that's one that we practiced a lot and we liked it. And so, I hate the outcome, but there was no hesitation. No, I knew before the drive started, like, hey, we're going to score and we're going to go for 2. Then you're in all 4 down territory, so it's more strategy in that way.
So I'll get to what I thought about the decision to go for 2. I preferred it. I thought it was the right call, but it wasn't like a no-brainer. There's a lot to consider there, and I think if those of you that felt like they should have kicked with 2 minutes and 47 seconds left, I think that there is a case that you can make for that. I'll share that with you coming up in a bit. All right, we are at that point where I'm listing the things I didn't like, the bad from the game, because there was so much good, which we went through. I started it with, they just don't get enough consistent pass rush. And they probably won't, this year, unless they're playing bad, teams and bad quarterbacks. Like, you may get a bad quarterback and a bad team on Sunday in Minnesota offensively. Now, Brian Flores in that defense, that's legit. But offensively, I mean, finally, back to the quarterbacks they faced last year, So I didn't like the end of the first half. I just felt like at the 35-yard line with 2 timeouts left, and 16 seconds left on the clock, at the very least, run a draw, run a quick game screen. And if it busts for, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 yards, you bang a timeout. And now, you're one throw from maybe a super long attempt. Moody does have a big leg. I just thought you're down 13-7. In your previous drive, you'd gone 11 plays, 71 yards, scored a touchdown. You've been moving the football. Again, the only time you didn't move, you moved the football on every single drive. You actually have them figured out, and you have them, they're reeling a bit. The interception was terrible, but other than that, they moved the ball even on the opening drive. Took 6 minutes off the clock and moved the ball on 10 plays. Debo had a 35-yard kickoff return. The ball's at the 35-yard line. You have 2 timeouts and 16 seconds left. I know what he would do with Jaden, okay? I just think you're 3-8, and you don't want to do something stupid to lose the game. And look, there's legitimate concern over some of their players and their ability on a drop back in that situation to strip, fumble, return it for a score, or be in field goal range. I get that. But it's not the 25-yard line. It's not the 20-yard line. You're at the 35. Debo fumbled that kickoff return. What a job by McNichols to get it back. Again, run the ball. Let's see a draw. Let's throw a quick bubble, and maybe it'll break for 10 or 12. Now you're nearing midfield. You can hit a quick timeout, 11 seconds left, and you got a chance to, with another timeout, completion down the middle of the field, timeout, and maybe a field goal. I didn't like how conservative that was. Man, I don't know what they were thinking. I have a feeling I know what they were thinking, and I'm going to share that with you, but 19 seconds left, no timeouts, the ball at the Denver 20-yard line in regulation, trailing 20-17. And they call a QB draw. Wow. I mean, you are rolling the dice. Now, if the call was made with the idea of, look, if he gets the first down, we get up and we clock it, and then we might have one last chance to chuck it to the end zone before we kick the field goal. Or maybe we think on a QB draw, he can score from the 20-yard line. They're not expecting it because they're going to be up trying to stop the short throw out of bounds. Or, but again, like the QB draw, if he's going to take it straight up the middle and get down, The play starts with 19 seconds. He gets the first down. You have plenty of time to get up, clock it, kick the field goal. But what if he gets stopped short of the first down? And the play ends at 12 seconds, 13 seconds left. You're in that fire drill trying to rush the field goal team out there to kick it. And what Mariota did is he broke it to the sideline. So now the play is already a longer play than anticipated, probably, with players now extended to the sideline, far away from the middle of the field where you got to get back and snap it and clock it. And he did a great job of getting to the sideline and then using forward momentum to make sure that his progress wasn't stopped. I was watching that ref, I'm sure you guys were. And when he crossed his arms and said clock stopped, I'm like, thank God. Because he does have the first down, and if they're rolling the clock, you probably can get back to the line of scrimmage and clock it just in time. But that's a high-risk call, man. Because what if they read it and they stop it for a 2-yard gain or a 1-yard gain, and you're now 4th and 3, 4th and 2, and you're doing the rushing the field. You've got time. You start that play with 19 seconds. They'll tell you that if the play ends with 13 or 14, there is time to rush the field goal team out. I'm sure they've practiced it, and it may have worked. I'm just thinking, I know a drop back's risky, but how about maybe just a max protect and a deep quick shot on a fade to Burks into the corner of the end zone? Something that either he catches or it's incomplete. That was really an interesting call. You don't see a quarterback draw in that situation very often. Great job by Mariota. So I didn't love the risk that they took with 19 seconds left on the 3rd and 3. What's next on the list of things that I didn't like? Look, the defense is better. It's more organized. They're playing a little bit differently. They're obviously playing a lot more zone coverage in the 2 games that Quinn has called. They're not giving up the 5, 6, 7 explosive plays every game. They played last night against the run better than they have in a month, maybe 2 months. But still, I get it. I'm comparing it to what they've been this year, with the crew they put out there. It hasn't been Armstrong, Wise, Harris, Lattimore, Amos, et cetera. They've lost all those players for games or seasons, and they've had backup players, and they've lost some of those as well. But I am comparing it to those guys, and that's maybe not a fair comparison, but it's better the last 2 weeks. They're not giving up the massive explosives. Achane had a lot of big runs to the edge in Madrid. They didn't give that up last night. Now, Denver's not the same team without Dobbins back in their backfield. But here's the thing, and this is why it's on the bad list. It's still a team last night that gave up to not a great offensive football team. 27 points, 402 yards, 7 for 15 on 3rd down, and the drive in overtime was embarrassing. 5 plays, 76 yards, complete sieve. I mean, right through them. It looked like the Detroit game on that drive in overtime, which we'll get to Quinn's decision to kick rather than take the ball. I think it was the right decision, but I understand in context that, some of you may disagree. Also on the list of things that I didn't like, this was just a poorly officiated game. There were so many missed calls and bad calls. Now, they lost their umpire during the game. Why doesn't the NFL have 1 or 2 replacement referees? I think they can afford it. So they went without the umpire. But here's the list I have. So some of it was, not, favorable towards Denver. Denver's 3rd drive, first half, 3rd and 8 before their second field goal that made it 6-0. Luvu gets the pressure on Nix. He goes helmet to helmet. Nix is screaming for it. They just missed it. Luvu can't lead with his helmet like that. That was a personal foul that he got away with. The personal foul on Benito pulling Biotish off the pile was, according to Terry McCauley on the broadcast last night, the wrong call. He actually thought, was it Tunsil? that came in and pushed Benito? Tunsil or Connerly? I forget. He actually said Washington should have been flagged for the retaliation, that apparently it wasn't enough of a pile for it to be flagged as a personal foul. You learn something every week. The missed tripping penalty late in the game on a 12-yard sack really was hurtful. It should have been 1st and 10 at their own 48 and 3rd and 21 on their own 25 in a game where they're trailing by 3. They had to punt down 20-17. That missed tripping call nearly cost them the game. That was right there in front of the referee. The false start on Terry on their game-tying drive in regulation. I mean, what are they looking at? He didn't move. There was no false start. The intentional grounding call on Mariota on their final drive was bad, according to McCauley. Was not intentional grounding. He threw it towards Terry, even though it was over his head. As long as it's in the vicinity, it shouldn't have been called grounding. That created a 2nd and 25 and then a 3rd and 25, which they amazingly overcame. I'll tell you what, man, I don't know about you guys, but towards the end of regulation, after the 3rd and 3, when they took a couple shots, the 3rd and 3 quarterback draw, 12 seconds to go, he threw the ball from the pocket, quickly unloaded it out of the end zone. It nearly landed in the first row of seats behind the end zone. I thought that was a potential grounding call. Collinsworth and Tirico didn't say anything about it, but it was clear he was not throwing to anybody, and it was so high and so far beyond the end of the end line. I thought, man, don't flag him for grounding. That would end the game with the runoff, with the clock runoff. Can you imagine if they had not gotten the game-tying field goal attempt because of that? Look, I think Terry's game-tying touchdown, it's a great route. Man, he catches that slant so well. But that's a clear OPI on Debo. Clear. You can't miss that. If you're a Denver fan, you're like, how can you miss that? He literally goes out and takes Terry's defender, I think it was Surtain, out. But on that play too, let me just mention, I think they missed an offsides. I thought Denver was offsides on the play. What else is on the list of things that I didn't like? What was wrong with the field last night? The new sod, slippery. Terry slipped multiple times, including on a play in which he actually caught the ball. All right, when we come back, I'll get to what I thought of the decision to kick off in overtime and the decision to go for 2 and the win. It didn't make my good list or my bad list, but it's worth the conversation. We'll have it when we return, and then we'll get to your calls. Phone lines are open at 301-230-0980. I do want you to know that this past segment was brought to you by IHOP, introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. $6. Where else can you get a big filling sit-down breakfast for only $6? Go to your happy plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. All right, some other observations from the game. So I was okay with the decision after Washington won the coin flip. By the way, Tressway was out there. They got to clean up the administration of this new overtime rule, the way every referee's explained it differently. I think they actually confused the players. The team that wins the toss gets the choice. They're not deferring, okay? They get the choice. There's no deferral there because there's no second half of an overtime regular season game. Okay, so they take their choice. We're either kicking or we're receiving. If we're kicking, we get to also choose the way in which we want to go. And so that's why Tressway said kicking and going that way. And the idea with the new overtime rule this year, that is the, overtime rule from the playoffs now transported into the regular season, except with a 10-minute extra session, is that both teams are guaranteed a possession. The game doesn't end on the first possession if the team scores a touchdown, like Denver did last night, to go up 27-20. And so the reason that you should, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you should kick off is the same reason you don't take the ball first in the college overtime. Because when you get possession of the ball, you'll know, A, exactly what you need. Do we need any score to win? Do we need a field goal to tie? Do we need to score a touchdown to tie, or maybe go for 2 for the win? And what that enables is you to be a 4-down team. You can't punt. The game is over if you punt, and possession changes. So you now have 4 downs, which Washington needed in their overtime drive. You have 4 downs, and you know exactly what you need. Now, I like the decision. I think it's the right decision. And even last night, the context being, man, that Denver defense, that vaunted Denver defense, Washington is carving it up. They are literally having their way. Even when a play is called back from a penalty, it's a touchdown. And they were exhausted. Denver's defense looked exhausted. So if you took the ball in that scenario, maybe you think you've got a chance to continue what you just finished and go up 7 on the opening drive. Yeah, but then you lose the ability to know what you need and to have all 4 downs, because if you're 3rd and 8 from your own 28 or own 38 in overtime, you're not going for it, you're punting it. And now all they need is 3. I was okay with the decision, but I understand in context last night that there was a reason to consider actually taking the ball. You had Denver's defense on the ropes, gasping for air. Which you also had when you went down the field and scored and then had the 2-point decision to make. So that's next on sort of the other observation list, which is the decision to go for 2 in the win. So I'm okay with that decision. I actually preferred that decision with 2:47 left in the game. They did have a timeout. There was the 2-minute warning. Yes, the 2-minute warning exists in overtime. And if you kick the extra point, all you need is a stop, and then all you need is field goal. And if you get a stop, worst case is you're probably going to end the game in a tie and not going to lose. But I think the defense, having given up that easy touchdown drive in overtime, 5 plays, 76 yards, it was like the Detroit game. That one play, even on a condensed field, even against a great defense, was a better way to go, because that defense was tired and they clearly thought they had a 2-point play that would work. And by the way, they did. They just didn't account for how great Benito is. Because and maybe that's one of the reasons you also consider, maybe that's the argument for kicking. It's like, here's the problem. Yeah, we got him tired. We have a chance to end it on one play. If we kick, we may lose on a field goal, especially after the way the defense played the first possession. But the best player on the field is on defense. Nick Benito, you could argue, is the best player on the field. And, is he going to make a play? Well, he did. I still would have gone for it. I just felt like in the moment it was their best chance to win. But I think it was a more debatable decision than maybe, a lot of people thought. The 2-point play itself was perfectly set up. All of the action left to right took out the linebacker who had McNichols, and he's wide open for the walk-off win. If Mariota can put it out there to him, but Benito had other ideas. He's really, really good. One of the other observations, if I haven't mentioned this, I've heard from many of you that said that last night was unfortunately a loss, but also unfortunately it felt like a road loss. I've had others tell me, because I did reach out after I saw a bunch of you tweet me saying I'm here and it is all orange and their let's go Bronco chants. And when they're on defense, it's louder for them on defense than it is for our own team. But a couple of you mentioned to me, and I called somebody who was, there and understands it and knows what he's looking for. And he said it was probably more 50-50, maybe a slight edge to one way or the other. But Denver's fans were loud, and there was definitely a neutral site environment, worst case. Did you know they had a long snapper, a new long snapper in the game?
I sure did.
Tyler Ott was out.
Yeah, out with I think an illness, I believe, that was going around the locker room.
So they had that going on. And then can I ask you who the hell number 59 is? Like every week there's like one or two players this season that are out there and you're like, I haven't seen that one yet. His name is Magora Aganya, and he's a defensive end, and he played 11 snaps. I see by the snap count.
Yeah.
I have no idea who he is.
Yeah, we just signed him, I believe, off the practice squad this week.
Well,
TJ Marinyaga.
Join the long list of players that have played for this team this year. There have been a couple of games where there have been 3 or 4 where you needed legitimately to look it up online to see who the player was. Yeah, I think that's it. Quinn called a timeout on defense with just over 3 minutes left in regulation. He was hesitant to do it. It cost him like 3 or 4 seconds. You got to know, man. You got to know. Every second matters. And he's calling them on defense, which is the right thing to do. But it was the one with 3:16 left, I think. The play ended at 3:20, 3:21, and he seemed hesitant to call it, and then he called it. Now, you got to know, because, look, if that 3rd and 3, is called inbounds and you're rushing to clock it or you're rushing to get the field goal team, that's where those 3 or 4 extra seconds matter a lot. Tress Way, by the way, had a huge punt in that game, late in that game. When they were backed up on the 3rd and 21 after the terrible missed grounding call, right? It was after that one. Or was it after the missed tripping call? Or whichever one they had to punt on. He had a booming punt. I mean, he's clutch. He's always been clutch as a punter. I want to just get the punt right where he boomed it. Yeah, 56-yard punt to the Denver 19. Mims did have a 6-yard return, but it was after the missed tripping sack on Mariota. All right, your turn. 301-230-0980. Let's start with Mike in Gaithersburg. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, Kevin.
Sure.
A couple things of note. I thought that I have no idea what Mariota was trying to do. When was it the end of the second quarter, or towards the end of the second quarter, and he did the jump pass, or he was trying to climb a wall?
Yeah.
And then he was like doing the pin the tail on the donkey when he was throwing it into the crowd. I mean, I think he should just taken a sack or something like that. You know what you're talking about?
Well, the one in overtime before the missed field goal, you can't take a sack. The game ends. I thought, he had a couple of those jump up in the airs, and one of them was the pick. That was a horrendous decision, horrendous throw. Look, this is what Tennessee fans and even Atlanta fans will tell you. There is often some good with Mariota. I think this is the best situation he's been in his entire career. But there are some head scratchers. We saw it in overtime in Madrid. We've seen it a few other times. We saw it in Dallas with that terrible pick 6, when he came into the game. And that's what you're going to get with him. But, man, the good so far outweighed the bad for, like, pretty much other than the Dallas game, which he came into, he's been pretty damn solid this year. I don't even know what his QBR was. I have no idea what PFF. Maybe you can let me know what PFF graded him. Here's his QBR, 57.8. Not great, but I thought that he was, as Quinn said, an absolute warrior gunslinger down the stretch. He missed some throws too, man. He missed some. But you're going to miss some. That's a great defense they faced. They just faced arguably the best defense in the league. I think Houston's is looking a lot like the Ravens of 2000 right now. I bet them to win the AFC Championship 4 weeks ago now, Max, at 30-1. They went into Indy and won. But Denver's defense is hellacious. But, yeah. All right, thanks for the call. Let's go to Vinny, who's calling from San Antonio. Vinny, go ahead.
Kevin, can you tell me how to think? I see DC media posting last night, this is a win. We played great, but more importantly, we lost, and we're creeping inside the top 5 of the draft. So should that be the goal the rest of this way? I'm sort of lost as a fan. You tell me.
I don't root for losses in November. I don't root for losses in early December. I don't root for losses when there isn't a regime change or a major need for a quarterback. So no, for me, I'm not. Look, if they end up with a really high draft choice, fine. I'd rather see them, get it together and have a different vibe coming out of 2025 than the vibe that was coming out of the Kansas City, Detroit, and Seattle games, which were truly one-sided, unusual NFL beatdowns. I don't want any of that. The idea of losing a close game, no. I want to see him win. I want to see Jaden back against this Minnesota defense that can really, really play. I want to see him win in Minneapolis. I want to see him win in New York, and then I want to see them screw it up for either Philly or Dallas in the 3 games that end the season. That's what I want to see. If there was a regime change coming, like this was a coaching staff on the way out and there was going to be massive change and they had a massive need for a quarterback, then I would be in position here in a few weeks to root for losses like I did on Christmas Eve when Zerline lined up to make that kick to beat us to ensure that we had the number 2 pick. But no, that's my advice. But I don't hate people that feel differently. I just picking 6th or picking 11th or 12th. Sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes picking, they put it this way. If you're picking higher, you get a chance to maybe get a haul of other picks if you decide to trade back to a team that needs a quarterback. What else you got for me? No more Vinny.
That's it, man. I love Steve Suter. And then I just want to say, nobody ever wants to talk about the punter, but man, he's a fellow native Oklahoman. I love Tressway. I hope we re-sign him. He's clutch, man. I actually hope that he never gets out there because I want our offense to be so good. But when he gets out there, such a clean operation. I love Tressway.
Yeah, he's been an absolute gem, and he's been really the gem. He and Terry, over the real dark years that ended the Snyder regime, were the two, hey, these 2 guys are high-quality people and pretty good players because they didn't have a lot otherwise. All right, let's go to D.C. D.C. in Calvert County. D.C., go ahead.
Great day, Kevin. How are you?
What's up, D.C.? How are you?
Man, I'm excellent. I just want to say, man, the performance, although we lost, was a good performance. The energy that Terry brings, I don't think it can be matched by anybody else on the team. Now, the ability, playmaking ability and things like that, it gives Cliff Kingsbury more of a freedom to call run plays and be confident on getting 3rd downs, and even more so with Jaden on getting 4th downs. And then we also got to talk about the defense standing up. Joseph played real well as Will Harris, and Jacob Martin been playing out of his mind all season. So I love everything that they did yesterday. We just got to get the win, and I think with Jaden back, I think, like you said, the wins will be. You
meant Jones, right? Jonathan Jones, because I have him down on my notes as somebody who I thought played well as well. Also, that's who you meant, right?
Yes. Yes, sir. My apologies, brother. At the
he almost
spot.
jumped a quick out. Like he was really close to getting there.
I was
I mean, I wanted the win. It would have been a lot better. Yeah. They had a chance in the last two games. They hurt themselves against Miami. Okay, they blew that game themselves. They muffed a punt. They threw a pick in overtime. But the truth is they just lost two games that were very winnable after losing three games that weren't winnable at all. 4 games in a row that weren't winnable at all. And had they won these two, 5-7 we'd be talking scenarios. We would be.
Kevin, I don't like using injuries as an excuse, but I never seen Jaden's demeanor the way it was in that Seattle game. Like, he's normally smiling, and people don't like that he's smiling, but he's a competitor. He kept being like disappointed, and that's why he was pushing, like he was pressing that game. And I was wondering why. But now you talking about what Kurt Warner didn't know that Chris Collinsworth mentioned, it was the players not running the routes right. Because I kept looking like, why?
Yeah, I talked about it a week after, or a few days after the Warner thing. I talked to somebody out there. It was LOL exclamation point, because we didn't have guys running the right routes or running the right depths, and it provided just the worst. And by the way, that was also like the Green Bay game. I heard Logan talking about this yesterday morning. I was out and about with family, and I had the radio on, and he was on with Grant yesterday on Sunday morning. Was that a pre-show, Max? I don't know. But I was listening to Logan talk with Grant about the season, and he pointed out the same thing about that game. And he also said that was also one of 2 games this year, Green Bay the other one, where they got absolutely obliterated up front, because Green Bay and Seattle are really good defensively. I'll tell you what, though, last night, different game plan. I thought Green Bay should have been more quick game, should have been more running attempts. But last night they handled what probably was a bit of an overmatch talent-wise really well. Thanks, DC.
Kevin, can I give you one more point?
Yeah, one more thing.
Treylon Burks, they got to bring Debo back, because Treylon Burks is a perfect complement to Debo and McLaurin. I think that'll set off the offense. And like Paulie been yelling, get the dude Love from Notre Dame if we can.
Yeah,
all right, brother, have a good one.
He got hurt against Stanford. I think he's okay, though. Thanks for the call. Yeah, look, Burks, so everybody knows, if you don't know who Treylon Burks is, he was a first-round pick in 2022 out of Arkansas, drafted by Tennessee. And he really struggled with a team that had major quarterback, issues in 22, 23, and 24. See Will Levis. His rookie year, he had 33 catches for 444 yards. Do you know last night's touchdown was just the second touchdown of his short career? So he's on year 4 of his rookie deal. I guess that means, no, I think they would have needed to exercise it. I think that's why he was available. I think Tennessee needed to exercise it, or he needed to be released and picked up before the exercise date for that class. Not that you would do that with Treylon Burks. I'm not suggesting that. But he's an unrestricted free agent. He's got size. He obviously has great hands. And the early word I've heard on him is he is a really good dude that fits in well, locker room wise. And I think Quinn described him as he's got a real hunger to fix this thing in the start of a career where a first round pick, ends up not having a career. That catch was insane. We see a lot of one-handed catches now. People go nuts over him every time we see him. But big hands. By the way, that was his hand in which he had the surgery on his finger that caused him to miss the last couple of games. Crazy stuff. Yeah, I like him. I mean, I'm trying to think of that draft, in terms of the receivers. So let's go through these. It's the Jahan Dotson draft. So that draft went in terms of wide receivers. Hold on, here's the order. The order was Number 1 overall was Drake London at 8. Washington was in love with Drake London. If he had fallen to their spot at 11, I think they would have taken him. Garrett Wilson went 10. Chris Olave, after New Orleans traded with Washington, went 11. Jamison Williams went 12. Washington, after the trade back with New Orleans, took Jahan Dotson at 16. And then Burks went at 18. So you had 6 receivers taken in the first round. London's a legit star. So is Garrett Wilson. Olave's really good. Jamison Williams obviously is an incredible threat. Just has had, issues. Remember, he got suspended before his first year. Dotson is the bust so far, along with Burks in terms of the first rounders. By the way, Alec Pierce was in the second round. George Pickens was a second rounder in that draft. Christian Watson was a second rounder in that draft. Romeo Dobbs, second rounder in that draft. So, yeah, you can find him later. But Burks was the 6th of the first round wide receiver picks. All right, stay on hold. We'll take more of your calls next.
All right. Happy Monday, everybody. We will start off with Sunday Night Football. The Commanders, they fall. But boy, did they keep it close. Jake Moody, field goal ties it at 20 to send the game to overtime. Commanders give the ball to Denver to start OT. They score. Denver scores pretty quick. Marcus Mariota leads a touchdown drive to put the game on the line at a 2-point conversion. But Nick Bonito busts through the line and bats the ball down. Denver wins their 9th straight. Final score, 27-26. A snapshot from the NFC East around the weekend. The Cowboys, they get another win on Thanksgiving, this time over the Kansas City Chiefs, 31-28. The Eagles, they fall for the second week in a row, this time to the number 1 seed in the NFC East, the Chicago Bears. And finally, the New York Giants, they get underway against the New England Patriots tonight on Monday Night Football right here on the Team 980. That pregame action gets underway at 8 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button. Whenever you do decide to join us, turn on notifications, stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
301-230-0980. Your chance to react to the 27-26 overtime loss to the Denver Broncos last night. Got that cover. First losing week, only losing week of the season so far for the smell test. 4-5-1 over the long football weekend. Some of you had an issue with me providing one more loser than winners. Hey, man, sorry. Maybe you just shouldn't take my picks anymore. I would short me, though. I would start to fade me right now. I would definitely do that. Let's go to Lap in D.C. Lap's been holding. Lap, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Hope you and your
What's up,
family
Lap?
had a good holiday, bro.
Yeah, you
hope
too,
you
Lap.
And your family had a good holiday.
Well.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, I like the fact that we was competitive. You know what I'm saying? Mariota, I like Mariota, just up and down with him sometimes, but I think he's talented enough. He's a veteran enough. Just sometimes it just head scratches when he, with the plays he make. And I know you had said that with Atlanta fans and, thinking that too. But just a competitive game. Terry definitely makes a difference. I will bring Debo back, and I've been saying Trey Burks. I love that kid, man. He's, 25? I want a young receiver, even if we get him in the draft or somebody on the roster, somebody we can bring back to build with Jaden. And I want them to use those tight ends more because I like all of our tight ends. And I think we need a pass-catching running back, too.
We need a lot.
Too, for sure.
We need a lot, Lap. Let me just make sure. Let's just, kind of like with everything coming out of camp and, even a guy like Krosky Merritt, who I still like, there's a reason Treylon Burks was out on the street, right? Doesn't mean that he can't resurrect his career and he can't be a really good player. There's a lot to like, and it's the reason he got drafted in the first round. But let's not, start putting our free agency and draft wide receiver plans, on the shelf because Treylon Burks is going to be, our next number one or number two receiver. There's a lot to like. There is. I get that.
Yeah.
But he's played in 2.5 football games for us. And in the first game and a half, he wasn't even truly prepared to play from a, up to speed standpoint. So what else you got?
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I wanted to see Jaden, be out there hopefully soon to play and compete and, build some chemistry with some guys, get some game reps. Hey, Kevin, 2 side notes for you. I know you're a show guy. Do you watch Mayor Kingstown or Tulsa King, or you heard his show?
No, I've heard Tulsa King is good. Yeah, I'm into Landman right now, but it's one episode at a time. Stranger Things is out. I'll be into some shows, but let me move on. We can do that on another day. I got to get some calls in here, Lap, on the day after a game. Let's go to Frank. Frank, go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, Frank.
I'll keep it short. Terry proved his worth last night, which as he's done throughout his entire career. And frankly, we've never had a good wide receiver 2 to pair him with. I'm hopeful that we can develop some of those pieces as he starts aging out and we can hold on to him. I'd love to see him retire as a Commander.
Right.
I'm not sure if Debo is going to be worth the money. I guess that's my bottom line. I'll disagree with some of your other callers on that. I think hopefully Burks might be able to. Frankly, I'd be willing to take a flyer on little Jordan Humphreys. I'm a Texas fan. I remember him being out there, and he did some good things with the Giants earlier this season. He's a taller guy, which we haven't had height in a while. So again, I know we need to develop some wide receiver depth, and he might be worth a flyer. Just another note, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what our coaching staff is going to look like next year. I'm a little worried that Cliff might find his way back to college. Obviously not LSU, but maybe Penn State. And just worried about what our coaching staff is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, Tavita Pritchard to Stanford over the weekend. How about that?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Cliff. I think Cliff is always going to be desired in the college game. I think he's desired in the pro game, certainly at the very least as a coordinator. But yeah, I mean, defensive coordinator is what they really have to focus on, because there are some people in the pipeline, even in the building, a guy like David Blau offensively as a possible coordinator, but they've also got, Anthony Lynn. They got Brian Johnson. They've got some guys in the building that could keep the continuity. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate the call as always. Hugh in Hagerstown. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for taking my call. I'm a longtime loyal listener and occasional caller, and I've got really two things I wanted to ask you about. And one was it takes us to agree on a couple of things first to get to my point, and that would be that I think we could agree that our defense the last two games has been noticeably better than it was from the prior games this season and even for most of last season. And if we can agree on that. And the second thing, if we can agree on, is that the head coach, Dan Quinn, in his ethos and at his core, is a defensive guy from the days he played and most of his career. So looking at both of those things, I'm really troubled by maybe his lack of judgment in terms of watching the previous 30 games, with Witt as his defensive coordinator and not making the kind of schematic changes that he's done to show this type of improvement for just two games. I just think that's, I don't know. And I'm a Quinn fan. I thought he was a great hire, but I'm troubled that he didn't make changes much sooner to make this season or to make them much more competitive defensively. Because not only were they bad, they were embarrassingly bad. And then the second question I had for you is not related to that. It's related to the referees getting hurt and then not having a ref on the sidelines. My understanding, and I'm a high school basketball fan, I think for the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference and the Baltimore Catholic League, they have referees in the stand. They have a referee in the stands in case the referee gets hurt for their games. And if the high schools can afford to do that, how in God's name does the NFL not have a referee sitting in the stands ready?
Yeah. I want to go back to your Quinn thing, though. So I think it's fair, certainly, to say, was he too loyal? Did he pick the right guy to begin with? Did he give him too much autonomy? Did he wait too long? With that said, the three worst results by far, I don't know that Quinn would have had much of a chance against the Chiefs, Seahawks, or Lions either. Actually, in the Chiefs, the first half, they played pretty well. They were literally putting players out there off the street, and they were facing two teams who were lethal, in throwing the football and guys that just couldn't be checked. They had nobody to cover. So Quinn picked it up at the right time for the Miami game and even for the Denver offense. But at the same time, I do think prior to the really awful results, it is fair to wonder, we talked about it all offseason. Was it more scheme or was it more personnel? Well, I think we found out that it was probably a lot personnel and maybe a lot scheme and play calling. They told many of us during the early portion of the season, when it really started to go bad against Atlanta, et cetera, it's everything. It's not just the play calling or the game planning. But yeah, it's not an unfair criticism to say, why didn't something happen sooner, like even in the offseason? I think that they thought they were devoid of talent last year, which was one of the reasons they were bad on defense. They certainly didn't have any ability on the edge to stop the run last year. That's a fact. Thanks, Hugh. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Kevin? Let me follow up on that question you just asked about a lot of people are talking about with Joe Witt. Kevin, I think people fail to realize when Dan got hired, he was the last coach to get hired in going into the 24th season. And he got hired, I believe, a week before the Super Bowl, which was February 5th or something like that. So he probably wouldn't have been able to get the assistant coaches that he really wanted. Now, he got Cliff by a miracle. They got Cliff Kingsbury. But I guarantee you, if you drug Dan with truth serum, I guarantee you, Joe Witt wasn't his first choice. I can almost certifiably guarantee you. But he was available at the time. So to be fair, I think, Dan was really doing what he had to do. Then they had the season they had last year. He was giving Joe as long a leash as he possibly could, to be fair to him. And I think it really wasn't his first choice. But as intelligent as you are, I'm quite sure you thought about that. You just never said it, correct?
Yeah. Look, when you come on with certifiable guarantees, usually they're not. He hired a phenomenal staff. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury basically said, Dan Quinn's the hire. Yeah, I'm going to bail on the Raiders job and a couple of others that are considering me because I feel so strongly in Dan Quinn. I mean, he has, former head coaches, former coordinators. He's got a pretty good staff. I think he did a pretty damn good job of actually hiring the coaches that he hired. But in terms of Joe Witt Jr., I don't know what the other options were at that point.
Well, let me say this to you.
So is it certifiable?
Yeah, it is certifiable.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that Cleveland's probably going to clean house this year? Because that's all I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that seems like something that might happen. Yeah.
Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, I've mentioned him a couple times. Thanks for listening.
I would get him. He's the number one guy on the list. That man, as bad as Cleveland is, they got a top 5 defense.
Yep.
That tells you something right there. I would get him to be the DC. And if Cliff leaves, you know what? Get Stefanski to be the OC. That way, it can piss off everybody that Jaden Daniels is learning the pro-style offense.
Stefanski would be a very good coordinator, and I think Jaden could do almost any of these offenses. But that would be, a Shanahan-style offense for sure. I would not have a problem with that at all if Cliff ends up leaving. Thanks, Mark. Let me finish up with Paulie. Paulie, go ahead.
Yeah, L to the W, man.
Yep.
Kind of piggybacking off of Hughes' call, he did take too long to make these moves. And that responsibility falls directly on Quinn because he's the head coach. And it ain't even just the schematic difference that you can see. They're playing with different energy. Where was this energy at all season long? And the only thing I can kind of relate that to is because they
played with some energy against Kansas City. The Kansas City game was highly energetic. The Charger game was highly energetic. The Raider game was. The Giant game was.
You name the bad teams. Talking about against these good teams.
Well, Kansas City, the urgency was there. That's not a bad team.
For a half.
Well, they had limitations, Paulie. We're not talking about what the results were. We're talking about whether or not they came out and they played hard. They played hard the entire game. They were ready for that game. They were just outmatched.
These past 2 games, you see the difference. Last night
the opponents are different too.
Say this team was lacking talent. They had three more primetime players to win that game.
Yep.
And one of them was in street clothes on the sidelines, as you said. You know what I mean? Last night you could say it was talent deficiency. But for the rest of the season, man, it's been schematic. It's been coaching. I'm not even going to go into your boy Cliff. He could go. Him and his soft offense, he can go. But whatever. That's a whole topic for another day. And I argue with you for 30 minutes on that one. But anyway, I just wondering, like, why did he make so long to make these fundamental changes, man? These are all fundamental changes.
You're talking about the one change. Joe Witt out, playing more zone coverage, playing more bend, don't break.
Hold on. Chris Rodriguez. I remember I texted you at the beginning of the season. I said Rodriguez going to have 1,000-yard season this year.
I forget all your predictions that turned out either right or wrong. Yeah. You can provide me with a spreadsheet on all of
I'm just telling you, no problem. I will. I'm up late. I will.
Yeah.
But my whole point is, my point was that, I thought Rodriguez gave us that physicality on offense that we got rid of with Robinson. And we with Bill. I mean, we just these moves, making these moves now.
Rodriguez wasn't healthy, remember, at times early in the season, too.
This and that, but at the end of the day, we lost, and it don't matter. Let's get ready for this draft pick. Jeremiah Love will be all right, bro. He came back.
I want to get ready for Minnesota. Okay. I want to go beat the hell out of Minnesota.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I know you do because you smell the chum in the water. They don't have a quarterback, and I'm tired of winning games like that with teams that don't have a quarterback. We feel good about ourselves, and then ruin our draft spot. I mean, this season is lost, and it's due to coaching and coaching decisions.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
it's
care
not.
if you like what I'm saying
That's
or
not
not.
what it's due
Yes,
to.
it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. You're smarter than that.
Yes, it is.
You're much smarter than that.
Let's go to Kingsbury. No.
Yeah.
Let's go to Kingsbury.
No. It starts with their best players haven't played enough football. That's where it starts. If you want to go to coaching, count 5 spots and then get to coaching after number 1.
So why the hell are we leading the offense with the passing game then?
What'd you say?
Coaching decisions.
What'd you say?
I said,
why are we doing what?
I said, well, why are we leading our offense with the passing game if you don't have professional receivers out there?
Well, we ran 11 of the first 20 plays last night. Last night was good run game. Tried to run it also, did a pretty good job against the Dolphins.
You try to put the offense deficiency on not having the receivers, the professional receivers out there running the right routes and everything.
Right. You lose me. Let me just tell you something. As much as I love you, you're too smart. And if you don't lead with, we haven't had players all year, you're in that class of next man up. It's coaching. You're at a certain point. I'm not saying that you're wrong that coaching hasn't played a role in some of this, but it's not number 1. That's not what number 1 is.
Man. Hey, listen. If I'm driving a Hyundai Elantra, I'm not trying to race a Porsche.
Yeah. If I'm trying to play Showtime and Kareem and Worthy and Magic are out, I'm probably not going to have the same results. I got to go. Ben Standig next. If you guys that I didn't get to were on hold, we'll circle back to it. We'll save all the other NFL from the weekend for tomorrow. Ben Standig next. Ben Standig is with us, but before we bring Ben on, let me just, because I could have been wrong in terms of what Paulie was saying. Paulie blamed it on the coaching and said, why are we, such a heavy pass first team? Is that what he said? I think he said that, right?
Something to that effect, yeah.
I just looked it up. Washington right now, 25th in the league in pass to run ratio. There are 24 teams that pass it a lot more than they run it. Washington's at 53.16 pass percentage for the season, 46.84 runs. They have the 10th most run attempts in the NFL, despite having one of the worst time of possessions in the NFL. And yes, I do understand that a lot of the rushing yardage, it's true, comes from Jaden when he was playing and Marcus Mariota scrambles. That's true. But it is not the pass over run in terms of the rest of the league. Maybe that's not what Paulie meant. Maybe Paulie wanted them to be dead last in that side. Seattle is the only team in the league that runs it more than they throw it. They're at 51.14% run, 48.86% pass. Everybody else is a little bit, is it anywhere from a lot pass to run like Cincinnati to, a little bit Seattle and Buffalo. But Washington is 25th or in run to pass ratio, they would be 8th in the league. Just, again, some of that scrambles, but it is scrambles for a lot of teams actually on this list too. All right, let's bring Ben Standig on. Ben, of course, covers the team, and he does so for himself and Last Man Standing, the podcast, and Substack, the column that he writes. As I've said many times before, Ben's intuition and the way he sees it is as good as anybody on the beat, and he is back with us in his normal spot of Monday. He's with us on Fridays as well. So you were there last night. We'll start with what we always start with on a Monday after the game. What were your big takeaways?
Well, first off, we've all been subjected to this season, which is now 3-9, 7 losses in a row. And for most of it, during this losing streak, it's been god-awful football to watch, at least from the pure entertainment value. Everybody got their money's worth last night. That was a highly entertaining game. I'm sure even on TV was crazier just because, it's a different deal than working during it. But that the fourth quarter was nuts. The overtime was crazy. Just Washington's drive with a touchdown called back, penalty on Denver. Like, there was just so much happening there. So I think from that perspective, it was a lot of fun. And I know we've been saying it would be cool for them to get a win just so we could have a different topic to discuss. Unfortunately, that part didn't happen. I think that the guys were incredibly bummed, as you can imagine, being that close. But yet at the same time, I think there was a certain amount of pride that popped up. That they were, I don't want to say optimistic, but hey, this was more in line of what we think we can be. And the fact that it came with Terry McLaurin back on offense, it changed. We've talked about this for weeks, starting with the Bears game, which was the first loss in this losing streak. That was the game where the Bears changed up their defense, went man on the outside, dared Washington to throw it down the field because they didn't worry about their receivers, crowded the box, took away Zach Ertz's stuff over the middle, and made this offense just so flat. The difference with Terry in there was just obvious. Even Zach Ertz apparently said something to McLaurin that he was thrilled that he was there because he was able to get open a lot more. So, that was notable. I think defensively, look, we can always nitpick on certain things, or Bobby Wagner giving up the big play to Evan Ingram and overtime and all that. But for the second game in a row with Dan Quinn, it felt to me like they were much more connected. Yeah, again, there's always some mistakes, whatever, but every team has something. It did not feel like a team that was disconnected the way it had been for much of the season. So I think all those things are positive. Again, I don't consider moral victories in pro sports, so I don't want to sound overly praiseworthy for when they lost, but clearly it was a much better performance, an entertaining game. And, I thought they would lose, but to me, the hope was that if Denver's offense is just inconsistent, that's the door for Washington the Washington can go through. The fact that they were able to move the ball as well as they did against Denver's defense for the most part, I thought was a bit surprising. So a good job, good effort, but ultimately, they're still looking for that win.
Yeah, more than a bit surprising. It was basically the most productive day against Denver's defense by any team not named Indianapolis in week 2. I mean, that's how good they were. 419 yards, 30 first downs, 8 of 17 on third down, 3 of 3 on fourth down. They ran 85 total plays. I understand there's overtime to contribute to that and a long overtime drive that contributed to that. But yeah, that was the surprise. And I've given Cliff Kingsbury a lot of credit. Look, the players, Terry being back was massive. Marcus Mariota was an absolute gunslinger down the stretch. Rodriguez in the running game was a major factor. The offensive line held up, in part because there was a lot of quick game, but not late. There was more drop back late. But it was that to me last night. I thought, now look, the score was 20-17 late in the game. I thought it was going to be a 23-20 kind of a game if Washington was going to have a chance one way or the other. Went to overtime 27-26. I did not think it would come because the offense was unstoppable moving the football. I thought it might come because Bo Nix coughs one up, once or twice during the game. So that was the big surprise to me as well. And for those that have been calling for everybody to be fired, and I know it's a minority of you, I know that most of you don't feel that way, and those of you that have been particularly focused on Cliff Kingsbury, it does make a difference when you've got a few of your better players back. And I think, Ben, they'd be 2-0 in these last 2 games had Jaden played. And I thought Mariota played well in both of them.
Yeah, look, I mean, just to focus on Mariota, I know you and I have talked about before the idea of, they need to keep him for next year. Do that now. I mean, the whole point of a backup quarterback. Yeah. The whole point of a backup quarterback is, does he give you a puncher's chance and then some if he has to come into the game? We all logically understand that the backup isn't the starter. You're right, Jaden. They're going to be better with Jaden Daniels on the field than Mariota, but he has more than given them excellent performances as a backup in these last 2 seasons. And I don't want to say where would they be without him this year, but if you look around the league to other backup quarterbacks, it's a far superior effort. Obviously, the defense has been the biggest culprit during this losing streak. So yeah, Mariota played very well. By the way, I don't know how to say his name anymore. I guess it was such a big deal on TV, and I don't even know how to say it.
What are you talking about?
Mariota? Wasn't
Mariota? Mariota? I think it's Mariota. I used to say Mariota, and people corrected me and said it's Mariota. What was the thing on TV though that you're talking about? I missed it.
Mariota.
Yeah. I wasn't watching, but yes, I think Mike Tirico was pronouncing it in a very peculiar way. I had multiple people texting me. We were discussing it.
Oh,
it was all over Twitter, social media. So anyway, yeah, it was.
How was he pronouncing it? Mariota?
Yeah, there was a very hard emphasis on that T in Mariota.
Okay. All right.
So I feel I know we'll be asking him a question this week on that.
I wonder if he would consider signing, a 2-year contract extension right now, or do you think? I mean, we've talked about him so many times. Like his whole thing is just different. He may not want to be a starter. He had some real issues in Philadelphia. His career, he thought, was coming to an end. There were a lot of, issues beyond just football that he was dealing with, and he loves it here, and they love him here. Do you think if they came to him and said 2-year contract extension, whatever the money is, you think he'd sign it, or do you think he wants a chance to start again?
I think he would. I think he would take it. The only way I could see him saying delaying is if he were to think, hey, Cliff Kingsbury might move somewhere else, and maybe he feels more connected to Cliff Kingsbury being to the system. And if Cliff Kingsbury is going somewhere, either he would be the same kind of backup or the mentor to a rookie or something like that. Again, obviously, whether Kingsbury is going to get a job, I don't know that that's going to happen this time. That would be my only thought. Other than that, he seems incredibly comfortable here. He's the rare athlete who you can see it's not wearing emotions on his sleeve, but you can see him sort of battling his own insecurities out there. He's there's a connection to him. It's not like all alpha with him, which is rare for a lot of athletes. So you can feel that his comfort level as a human being is much better here. The only other thing I would imagine is obviously he's from Hawaii, played college on the West Coast. Does he want to be closer to his people? That would be the other thing. But, I presume he probably could have looked into that more this offseason and pass. So I think if everything were to stay the same, I think he would probably sign up for this. I would bet.
Yeah, I would bet that too. We're talking to Ben Standig at Ben Standig on X on Twitter. They appeared to get out of last night's game relatively unscathed health-wise, which is unusual. Is that accurate?
I think so. Obviously the questions, there were so many questions about the game that, and all the things that what happened, but I don't know if Dan Quinn gave us any kind of breakdown. But other than there was one point Percy Butler was getting checked for concussion, then he went back in. Other than that, there was not that I remember any announcement about any kind of an injury. So, Terry said that he went in with a snap count of around 25, which he kind of laughed at. He's like, look, I know if the game is going to be close, I'm blowing through that. He obviously did, but he sounded like he felt maybe a little winded at times, having not played in a while. But hey, when the game's on the line like that, you got to give it all you can. Nobody can argue that he didn't do that last night and then some. So I think unless something cropped up overnight or somebody played through an issue, I don't know of any new injuries, which is rare for this team.
So what do you think the chances of Jaden Daniels returning Sunday in Minnesota are?
I guess the question is he cleared for contact? I asked Dan Quinn this week if he is cleared for contact. Is that all you need to hear for him to play? And he kind of deferred, we can't get to the next step before we get through this one. So is he cleared for contact? I think that's going to be the big question. I don't even know, man. I've lost my all these injuries. And when they're going to come back, I think there's a decent chance just because he practiced all week for sure. But, we hear Dan Quinn say this all the time. We're not going to skip a step and all that. Well, in this player in particular, I don't think they're going to. So if he's cleared for contact and can go this week without issue, then I imagine he plays. But, we got to see what the medical staff has to say about that. And look, I think if we're being realistic, they've got to be looking at this Minnesota game as the game to end this streak. Because whether it's J.J. McCarthy coming back or Brosmer, who obviously looked like a train wreck yesterday, they've got to feel the way they're playing. They've played the last two games, particularly on defense, that they've got a real shot. So, they could probably feel that way, regardless of which one of them is a quarterback. But getting Jaden against this team, Minnesota, in theory, has a good defense. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't do much yesterday.
Oh, they've got a very good defense and a well-coached defense. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think this would be you don't have to worry about a soft landing spot for Jaden, but at the same time, this would feel like a good opportunity to go for the win. And if that means playing him, if he's cleared, then I could see it happening.
I mean, let me just mention to everybody, Washington is favored at Minnesota next week right now by 1 point. I see 1.5s out there. Why would it be? I actually would have guessed that it would have been 1 or 2 either way. But the reason for it is that Washington's defense, the odds makers look at and say, okay, well, Miami and Denver, but they still rolled up yards, and Miami missed obviously multiple times in the red zone and had some defeating moments in the red zone. And Denver rolled up 400 plus yards on this defense and went through it like a sieve in overtime. And so this would be for Minnesota, the get right game for its offense. That's the way they would probably view it. And they're probably right. Seattle is not the get-right game or the introduction to the NFL for Max Brosmer. It would have been a much softer landing spot for Brosmer to face this defense next week in Minneapolis if he was going to play. But the return of Jaden obviously is going to help. They're going to play another really good defensive team, not Denver. But Minnesota is coached well defensively with Brian Flores, and they did a good job on Seattle. It was the turnovers that made the score lopsided and the fact that Minnesota couldn't score. But Sam Darnold barely threw for 100 yards in the game against Minnesota's defense. Just keep that in mind as well. What else? I was going to ask you, did you have any strong feelings about some of the decisions that were made? Like, let's just start at the end of regulation, the 3rd and 3 quarterback draw with 19 seconds to go and no timeouts. That was a pretty high risk call in that spot.
Yeah. No, I was sitting next to our guy Grant Paulson in the press box, and both of us were like, "What was that?" Like, if Mariota doesn't get out of bounds, we're having a huge discussion about what the heck was that. So yeah, it's definitely a risky call for sure. I mean, I guess they obviously time these things out.
Yeah.
So in their head, it's probably not that big of a deal, but it certainly, it would have been that scrambled mode to get the ball spiked, which raises our anxiety level. But for them, this is what they practice and what they do. So from that perspective, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, it worked out as it did. I mean, look, I think that Cliff Kingsbury, called a pretty good game. I think the offensive line did a good job. The quick passing game made a lot of sense. Terry said after the game that their plan was to try to have longer, extended drives. I think both obviously to keep their defense off the field a bit, but also to make Denver, sort of have to defend the whole field and not just being able to, tee off on, 3rd downs and things like that. So I thought overall they did a pretty good job. So, if Cliff called that play and give the benefit of the doubt, but it definitely was like, whoa, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I thought he had a great night considering the opponent and that they were still down their starting quarterback. But yeah, the interesting thing is if it's a normal quarterback draw and it's a run up the middle and he gets the first down, there's plenty of time to get lined up and clock it. Once he broke it to the outside, now you get a longer play. And if he's not ruled out of bounds, it's still a first down, but now you got to hustle to clock it. You probably still get it done. The issue really for me is what if he gets stopped on a longer play, inbounds without getting the first down? Now you got to rush the field goal team out, to do one of those jobs. That's where they took, I think, an unnecessary risk. I'd have thrown a fade deep into the right corner of the end zone for Burks, and maybe he catches it, and if he doesn't, time to kick. But anyway, there were a couple of others. The decision, I think, in today's game is, heavily weighted that you should kick when you win the toss in overtime. But there's always context, and the context last night was Denver's defense was gassed and reeling at the end of regulation, and maybe Washington should have taken the ball first. I was fine with the decision. Did you think differently?
I was okay with it. I think we're sort of trained to say take the ball first, but obviously the new rules are, both teams are going to get a shot at the ball. And in this case, because Washington matched the touchdown, they were the team that could go for 2 and go for the win.
Well, go for 4th downs too. They had 4 downs.
Right. Exactly. So I think, in this new era, I don't have a huge issue with it. But you make a good point, though. The Denver's defense had to have been tired. That was crazy that it had a 18-play drive in 3 minutes. I mean, that is getting a lot of work in there in very short amount of time.
We had some false starts. We had a grounding. We had too many men on the field. We had all kinds of stuff going. I mean, it was a crazy. Tirico, who is just flat out the best, regardless of his pronunciation of Mariota's name. Like he said it at one point. He's like, man, this has been a hell of a football weekend. It's always a great weekend, but what a game to end the NFL weekend, although actually it ends tonight. But it really was, even for just any NFL fan, a terrific, compelling matchup, or not matchup, but game, as it turned out, and probably unexpected for most.
Oh, look, I mean, if you're an NFL fan and you've been subjected to watching Washington on these national TV games or like the Madrid, one game windows, you've watched largely blowouts. I mean, the Bears game obviously came down to the end, and the Dolphins game with overtime, but that matchup was just poor. The other game, I mean, Washington's 0-6 now, I think, in all the primetime games, including the Madrid game. So you've not watched very good football. This was, again, highly entertaining, and it showed, if you compare where they were, the Bears game or the Seattle game, for sure, the defense looks miles better than it did. So, I think that's helpful. And again, like you said, Denver still was able to do a lot of what they wanted, but I felt that came down more to just, that we know they're missing a lot of guys because of injury versus that they just all seem off. So, take that as a positive. But I mean, I think they've got to be, again, they've got to be looking at Minnesota here as we got to get this. I mean, the next two games really, Minnesota and the Giants. And the Giants game's obviously
they're going to be toss-ups, just so everybody understands. The odds makers are going to have both of these games because they're on the road as toss-ups. I mean, it's just, we feel after playing Cowboys, Bears, Cowboys, Chiefs, Seahawks, Lions, and then the Dolphins, but then the Broncos, it's like, oh my God, finally you get a bit of a break on the schedule with teams that are really struggling. But this team's also lost 7 in a row. Real quickly, did you have any issue with them going for 2 in the win?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it would have been an interesting conversation if they were 8-3 versus 3-8. But at 3-8, oh, absolutely, go for it. I mean, a tie is not changing anybody's spirits, and if you lose, hey, you've already been losing, but you played a good game, go for the win, zero problem. And the play call, look good. The only question I have, and I haven't really had a chance to go watch the All 22 yet, is how does Nick Bonito, of all people, how is he the one that gets a free rush at the quarterback? That to me is the one question. I mean, it looks like they just had more guys on that side than Washington had blockers, especially with the running back going into the.
Well, they were using those receivers on the side to basically clear it out for McNichols, who was wide open.
Right. So, so that part's tough, but no, I had zero problem going for 2.
Yeah. I'm going to watch that on the All-22 here shortly. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you on Friday.
Yeah, man. See you.
Ben Standig, everybody, at Ben Standig on X on Twitter. If you're still on hold, stay there. We got a line or two open, 301-230-0980 if you want to weigh in. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget all of our NFL discussion on this show is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Back after this. Be interesting to see what Dan Quinn says today in his post-game presser. I think that he was genuinely pleased with how they played, the fight. The thing about Joe Witt Jr. and the continuation from last year to this year and the waiting to make a move, I'm all in on that conversation. I am. I think it's a worthy conversation. I also think it's fair to point out that the two games in which Quinn has taken the reins, it is different, but what contributes to it being different and the results being different is that they didn't play the Cowboys, Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions in consecutive weeks. I don't know that they, would have looked a lot different against Detroit. Now, maybe they wouldn't have played as much man coverage in any of those games, and that's been a big shift. Heavy zone coverage against Miami, and much more zone coverage last night. Could have made that change as the head coach with the defensive coordinator. I prefer this. I think they had to make the move, even if he wasn't, the overwhelming largest slice on the, blame pie chart. But it's not like the defense is stopping people and stoning people. I mean, Bo Nix threw for over 300 last night. They had over 400 yards in the game. They were very successful on third down in the game. Miami, Achane rushed for like 5 yards a carry in the game. I thought last night overall, the defense against the run was one of the best efforts they've had all year. I can't remember the last time it wasn't super easy to run the football. And the funny thing is, the very first play from the game, in the game last night, was the kid from UCF, Harvey, right up the middle for 11 yards, basically. I'm like, oh, God. But then they got really good against the run. I mean, Harvey in the game, you take that 11-yard first play of the game away, he was 12 for 24, 2 yards per carry. Overall, he was 13 for 35, 2.7 yards per carry. They did a nice job against the run. I think part of that was we saw the good Duran last night for much of the game, and having him there with Kinlaw. And they seem to be better against the edge. I thought maybe even Preston Smith may have graded out better than he's graded out this year. A couple of guys I didn't mention, one of the callers mentioned, I thought 31, Jonathan Jones, was in the right spot. I thought Sanders still smacked people around. He really hit. He's much better facing the quarterback rather than running in man coverage with somebody. Anyway, phone line's open if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. Chris in Delaware. Chris, thanks for holding, man. Go ahead.
Hey, Kev. So, imagine this. It's 5:45 last night. I'm settling in after the long Thanksgiving weekend. Kids are going back to school, and my buddy FaceTimes me, another diehard, and goes, dude, tickets are $21, upper bowl, front row.
Yeah.
Let's go. And we convinced our wives. We went down. And it really was a fun game to watch. I mean, I think watching it on TV would not have been, the same. Plus, listening to Collinsworth, I mean, just glad I didn't have to do that. But, you mentioned a little bit about the takeover, or someone else did earlier.
Yeah.
It was easy, 65-35 Denver. I mean, it was a lot of orange, especially in the lower bowl. And they were loud. I mean, they're 9-2 team, and we're a 3-8 team, so their fans are louder than ours. That's just how that goes. But couple points on the game itself. Defense is playing better with Quinn. I think you just have to chalk it up that they're in better positions. The scheme is probably not that much different, but they're playing with more confidence with his coaching. I think it's clear. Kingsbury called for the most part a pretty good game, but I tell you what drove me crazy was seeing that Wildcat. I mean, why are you trying to run the
I
ball
mentioned
10,
that. I said I didn't like the Wildcat calls. Yeah.
And those were calls in pretty crucial down and distances. So it was just like, why are you running into the belly of the beast 10v10 with Mariota, just a wasted player on the side?
Yeah,
so that was
that's
really
the thing. When you line up in Wildcat with your quarterback on the field, you're not 11 on 11. You're 10 on 11. So it's not the advantage you get with your quarterback as a runner. And Collinsworth actually made a good point. He's like, I think they ran some counter on those Wildcats. So the slower developing run plays against that defense is not what you want to run, and neither one of them worked with Krosky Merritt or with who was
with Rodriguez.
Debo
Rodriguez.
It was Debo and Krosky Merritt, I think, had the 2 snaps.
Yeah.
And Wildcat.
And just a few more points, and then I'll let you take some other calls.
Sure.
Is that the final drive in regulation? I know it was all wacky penalties. You know, it was kind of back and forth. But the final 3 plays, man, like they got to get the ball, you know, into the end zone. I mean, where are these corner plays? Like they got to be able to throw the ball and stretch.
Wait, take me to the spot you're talking about. Sorry.
It was, you know, the two plays before they decided to kick.
At the end of regulation.
At the end of regulation, yeah. Like, because I don't know, I didn't love going into overtime in that game. I thought their best opportunity would be just put them out with the score there, and you know, overtime went the way it did. But it just the play calling there just seemed scared. They seemed like they were scared to even test like the middle, you know, the middle halves of the field, if that makes sense. If you're dividing into quarters,
you know, once you burn that last time out, I mean, you got to be careful with that. I think the 3rd and 3 quarterback draw was, you know, a higher risk play than, you know, a deep fade into the corner of the end zone, taking a legit shot on that 3rd and 3. I thought really on that final drive, and then you go to the overtime drive, you know, and they went for it for the most part. And even in that spot, you know, the quarterback draw, I bet you he said, we have a chance to score on that play. And if we don't, we've got the first down and we can easily clock it in that spot. But Mariota broke it to the outside and chewed up some clock, and then fortunately got out of bounds just in time.
And last
go ahead,
point,
Chris.
is that in overtime, my hope is that we look back on this game in the same way that we look back on the Jet game with Greg Zuerlein, and we say, thank you, Benito, for swatting the ball, because our draft pick, whatever it winds up being, we got some stud. And if it wasn't
I can't join you on that one. I wanted them to win the game. It's different for me when there's a regime change coming and there's a desperate need for quarterback, and we're in late December, early January. On November 30th, you can't get me to root for a loss for draft purposes.
No, I was rooting for a win. I'm saying when we look back. Like I wanted to win the game. I mean, I banged up my arm slamming the plexiglass in celebration at one point. I wanted to win, but I hope you know, 6 months down the road, that's how we look at it.
Yeah. So. Well, sometimes drafting 10th is better than drafting 7th. I mean, it's not. Washington, it would be better if they had the highest possible draft choice. But the reason that they would get to that spot isn't a reason that I'm interested in rooting for right now. And it's not just because there's a guarantee the player there is going to be better than the player later. That's not true. But for them, you know, they only have 6 picks. They don't have a 2nd. They don't have a 4th. So maybe there's an opportunity, especially with some quarterbacks around 6 or 7 or 5, if they ended up there, to perhaps get a haul for trading back. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. I got to get to a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what was a crazy weekend since the last time we were together, last Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, happy Monday, everybody. We start off with Sunday Night Football. The Commanders, they fall, but boy, did they keep it close. Jake Moody field goal to tie it at 20 and send the game to overtime. The Commanders give the ball to Denver to start the extra period. Then they score quick, and Marcus Mariota leads a touchdown drive to put the game on the line in a 2-point conversion, but Nick Benito breaks through the line and bats the ball down. Denver wins their 9th straight game. Final score, 27-26. Snapshot from the NFC East over the weekend. The Cowboys, they get a win this time over the Chiefs, 31-28. The Eagles, they fall for the 2nd week in a row, this time to the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Chicago Bears. And finally, the New York Giants, they get underway against the New England Patriots tonight on Monday Night Football. That'll be right here on the Team 980 at 8 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
So I am looking at the all 22 of the 2-point conversion. We'll save the other NFL for tomorrow. We'll save the Lane Kiffin conversation for tomorrow. So here's what Denver does. You know, they had shown some. We saw it all night long where it looked sometimes like it was zero blitz coverage. They were coming with everybody staying in man coverage behind it, and they dropped out of it. They are in zero coverage. There are, you know, there are 5 eligible receivers, and there are 5 men covering in man-to-man, and everybody else is blitzing the quarterback, including Benito, who is the free rusher. You know, typically when you are against zero, there's going to be a free rusher. You know, if all of your receivers are, and you got 5 blocking, in this case, you had 6 potentially blocking 7. It turned out to be really 5 blocking 7. And there's going to be a free rusher, always zero coverage blitz, and there's always a hot. Their hot is the play that they called, which is essentially clearing out Hufanga, who has, you can see it pre-snap, he's got man coverage because they bring McNichols from split wide left back in motion back into the backfield and actually right of Mariota, where he's going to come out into the left flat. And Hufanga chases him across as he's in motion. So they know they're in man, and they do a great job with Debo and Burks and Terry, Debo and Burks in particular, of clearing out Hufanga, which clears out McNichols. Now, there's another option, and it's Terry coming across the back part of the end zone, but that's not what he's going to get against zero coverage. He's got to get it out quickly. He has to get that throw out faster with with more height to clear Benito, and Benito just makes a great play. As far as why Benito, I don't think that they necessarily diagnose this as zero. Somebody sent me something. Let me just read it. Did Mariota say after the game that... Here's his quote. This is a friend of mine that sent me the Mariota quote on the last play. I don't know. Maybe we have it in sound, but it's okay. You don't have to find it. The defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, was doing a good job mixing up zero and showing zero and dropping out. So Mariota thought they were going to drop out of zero. And he said, and then on the 2-point, he brought zero. I knew I had to try to get some depth and give our guy a chance. He made a play on it, and that's the way it goes. So, yeah, bottom line is, you know, he didn't have the ability. They had the right play call on against that. Leaving Benito, the tallest, you know, angular, long-armed dude, as the free rusher was probably not great. But Tunsil to block him leaves somebody much closer to the quarterback, you know, in terms of you know, a free rushing situation. So, yeah, that's what happened. Mariota said it last night after the game. Tough loss. I really wanted them to win that game. Really wanted them to win that game. 1 game left in this incredible Thanksgiving Day of games. And man, you know, we haven't talked since Wednesday. Those Thanksgiving Day games were incredible. I didn't watch the first 2, you know, snap for snap. I watched the late night game, the Cincinnati game. How much better are the Bengals with Burrow? And by the way, how bad are the Ravens? Are not a good team right now. They're just not a good team. I know that they had this winning streak, but I kept saying they haven't looked impressive against anybody. And they got the door. They turned the ball over 5 times against Cincinnati's defense. There's still hope. Maybe a 3. Max Brosmer threw 4 picks. J.J. McCarthy's been a turnover machine. Maybe we'll get multiple turnovers and takeaways. You know, that number is still way down there. Washington still, even after last night with getting the 1 Bobby Wagner pick, they are still right now tied for next to last with the fewest takeaways. The Jets have 2. They recovered a muffed punt at the 2-yard line against the Falcons yesterday, and the Giants and Washington both have 7 takeaways. Tied, Washington and New York are for the next to last number of takeaways. By the way, in terms of turnover differential, Washington, third worst in the league. That usually goes hand in hand with the record. Minnesota, the worst in the league at -15, and hence the reason they are not doing well. But God, those games on Thursday were great. The game on Friday between the Bears and the Eagles, what a stunner. I mean, that's the signature win the Bears have been looking for, after beating the Bengals, Giants, Vikings, and then the Steelers, an injured Steelers team. They went on the road, and what they did to Philadelphia's defense on the ground is, where does that come from? I mean, the NFL, you can't figure the damn thing out. I mean, Philly's defense is playing great football. They gave up 281 yards on the ground. Monangai, the rookie from Rutgers, and DeAndre Swift both went over 100. 130 for number 25, Monangai, and 125 for Swift. Unbelievable the way they ran the football. Give Caleb Williams some credit, man. He makes some plays. And Philly, is Dallas going to win the division? Philly has the Chargers on Monday night on the road. Justin Herbert broke his hand yesterday, but it's his non-throwing, so he's going to likely play. Then they have the Raiders at home. That should be a win for their 9th win. And then it's Washington at Buffalo, Washington to finish up the season. Meantime, the Cowboys, who now have won 3 in a row and sit there at 6-5-1, they have the Lions on Thursday night, followed by the Vikings, Chargers, Washington, and the Giants. I think Dallas can afford one more loss, and that's it. 10-6-1 might get them in. 11-5-1 might win the division. So if they can go to Detroit on Thursday night and beat the Lions, who are reeling a little bit right now, they'd have a shot to run the table and win the division at 11-5-1. Because the Eagles might get to 11, but it might be with 6 losses. Crazy happenings in the NFL, man. I mean, it's the AFC North winner could be Cincinnati when all is said and done. The AFC South, we've never seen a year like this with the AFC South. Jacksonville, Indy, Houston, all good teams. Houston playing very well. And then you got the NFC South and the Carolina Panthers beating the team that everybody said is the best team in the league, the LA Rams. Stafford's throwing picks. He's handing out candy in the first quarter of that game. And they lose 31-28 after they were on, a 6-game win streak, beating the snot out of everybody, including teams like the Jags and the Bucks. Wow. What a season. What an upside down season. Stranger Things kind of a season, speaking of upside down. Really good NFL season. Too bad we're not participants. Man, if they could have only won these 2 overtime games and been sitting there at 5-7, we would have been talking scenarios. We're done for the day. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.